Michelle.
Oh, hi, Michelle. How's it going, Renee? Hope everyone's having a good night. Started a little late, just had to figure out the camera and all that. And can everyone hear me okay? I have the phone kind of like far away. We're doing good. It was a beautiful day here. It was like 50 degrees in Chicago, which was awesome. So just gonna wait for a couple more people to show up. It looks like we have 6 right now. Is everyone excited for the witches ball for Halloween? How's it going, Katie? We'll wait till we get to like double-digit viewers, then I'll start. Perfect. Glad everyone can hear. So does this time usually work for everyone for these videos? I know I'm an hour earlier than you guys, so... How's it going, Leona? Alright, so I guess we'll get started. It's about half hour past 9, so alright, so tonight we're going to be talking about my personal patron god, Pan. A lot of people are familiar with him through the concept that he's portrayed in, usually in British traditional witchcraft traditions like Wicca, that sort of thing, where he's just like a kind of overall horned god. He's actually a lot more than that. You know, he comes from Greece. He has a really long history of many different cults and ways people viewed him. So kind of want to branch out on who he is and then how to work with him. And specifically what we're going to get into is how Pan influenced the imagery of the Christian devil. A lot of times when you hear people talk about modern witchcraft, there's always this saying, witches don't believe in the devil or witches don't work with the devil. That's kind of half true. The devil is very literally our old gods or our pagan gods. Christianity basically took them, demonized them, made them the embodiment of evil, which of course we know they're not. So one god in particular they kind of honed in on for this, and that was Pan. A lot of it is because of who he is and how he looks. So if you look right here, we got this beautiful statue that I made. So here's Pan in all of his satyr glory. few things stand out. Of course, you have the horns, so the goat horns and the goat feet. These are very characteristic of the Christian devil. They literally stole this from him right off the bat. And he's also a phallic god, which, of course, sexuality to Christians is sin. So that was a big part of why they chose Pan as their mascot for evil. He pretty much stood for everything that they were against. So basically, free will, the ability to give into your natural instincts and urges. This was all something that the church really frowned upon. So they turned him into their devil. He kind of underwent resurgence around the, I would say, when was Versailles, like that whole period?
Oh.
Like maybe around the Renaissance, the neoclassical period. He started to emerge a lot in art, again symbolic of the lusty aspects of him. So he's chasing nymphs, he's frolicking, he's pretty like joyous. So he's usually he looks pretty comical and happy a lot of the times. So when the rising pagan population, well, the neo-pagan population started to look for their embodiment of their god, they turned to Pan. Because of this imagery, because he looked joyous and because he looked closely connected with nature. So at the beginning of British traditional witchcraft, it was very Mediterranean, Egyptian focused. So you have the visage of Diana as the universal goddess, and then the visage of Pan is the universal god. Once Gerald Gardner and Doreen Valiente started to incorporate a lot more of their British ancestry into their work, they didn't really connect as well with the Mediterranean gods, so they started to try and figure out who they can use that's closer to home. And that's where Pan pretty much lost his seat to Cernunnos, who now most people associate with the horn god. He's a little different. He has antlers instead of the goat horns. In most depictions, Cernunnos isn't nude, so he's usually dressed in robes. And he's also a little bit more enigmatic, so he doesn't have the cultural history that Pan has, so it was really easy for them to take that image and make it their own, make Cernunnos their own. So where does that leave Pan? Well, Pan kind of went by the wayside for a little while as far as in witchcraft traditions, unless people were using him as a kind of replacement horn god for Cernunnos. And of course, whenever a Christian sees Pan, they automatically think he's the devil. I remember one time my husband and I were doing one of those street art festivals, and I was selling statues, and one of them was Pan, and people would come to our booth and they would kind of, glance at me and ask me if I worship the devil. I was like, no, I don't worship the devil, this is Pan. And they were just taken aback, like, they're like, oh, I've never seen him like that, because usually the depictions you see of him, it's a little less vulgar, if you could say that. But I kind of changed my attitude when I started really getting into the history of witchcraft, the folklore of witchcraft, and then what really helped me kind of reconcile the whole devil and witchcraft was a religion called Quimbanda, which is out of Brazil. Basically, just this could be a whole video on its own, but in Quimbanda there's a head figure called the mayoral. It's basically, they use the Baphomet as the image for the mayoral, and it's basically the anger and wrath of all the old gods mixed into one, and they take on the image of the devil to kind of fight against the oppression and the tyranny of Christianity. He's just getting the laptop. We were going to do a laptop video, but it didn't work out, so. Let's see.
Isn't that Dionysus called?
Yeah, Pan is definitely associated with Dionysus. In fact, they're pretty close friends. They're usually partying together. If you look at the cult itself, so Dionysus is a mystery god, so he's a god of basically the mystery cults. He's thrice born, so he was first born from Semele, which she was immolated by Zeus. Zeus took the infant Dionysus and sewed him up in his thigh, so he was born again out of Zeus's thigh. And then Dionysus was murdered by the Titans, torn apart, and then reborn from that. So he was born 3 times. Through his connection with vegetation and the fertility of the earth, that's where we see kind of Pan coming in. So Pan attends Dionysus throughout his adventures in the wild. So I actually keep a shrine to Dionysus fairly close to Pan. They both kind of symbolize a little bit of the same thing. So whereas Pan is the instinct of lust, Dionysus is the mover of lust. So Dionysus, usually through the symbolism of like wine and intoxication, he kind of gets you in the mood. Whereas Pan is that primal, like what's going on hormonally, as opposed to through some kind of external thing like wine. But yeah, they definitely have a lot in common. Sometimes you see a lot of depictions of Dionysus where he kind of looks like Pan, so he'll have goat legs, sometimes goat horns, even though Dionysus has the horns of bulls. So, but yeah, they're definitely very close, cult-wise. So back to the Kimbanda. So they use the image of the Baphomet as their mayoral figure. So this is like the deity that opposes the tyranny of Christianity. So basically, because Christianity is rather oppressive, it stifles your free expression, your free will, your natural instinct. This force wants to remove those constraints. So it appears as their devil because it is literally the force that's fighting against their dogma. So when I started to learn about that, it really hit home that yes, there is the devil in witchcraft, because that is literally the shadow form of our gods. That's when our gods are angry, when they're enraged, when they see injustice, they become the devil figure. So when I have, like, we actually have a shrine to the devil, and I see him as the shadow of Pan. I see him as that force of nature that, tempts people to be themselves and tempts people to follow their lust, and not let anything stand in their way. So, quite literally, the Baphomet. So the Baphomet's a really enigmatic figure in himself, because in his history, it wasn't what you see now. It was basically, some accounts said it was a mummified head. Some accounts say it was a mummified cat. It wasn't till what's the guy's name? Alphias Levi. He drew his version of the Baphomet, which is the one that everybody associates it with. Originally, he titled it the Sabbatic Goat. He took the imagery directly from the goat of Mendes, which is a city in Egypt, which was associated with Pan. So it was their equivalent god. The Greeks associated with Pan. So the goat of Mendes was seen as an aspect of Pan. So when he created the image, he lifted that from Pan imagery. So that's why you have the goat head, the goat horns, the flame of illumination. So this is, I like to consider it the witch flame. So this is like the power that we draw from the ether to manifest our desires. Oh look, I can actually see what everyone's saying now. Hold on one second. Just gotta. So that's another aspect that I put into my own cult, is this concept of the presence of ether. So in ancient, because I'm my religion is Hellenismos, well, kind of Gnostic Hellenismos. So I do a lot of my stuff is based on the Greek polytheistic religion. Yeah, no problem, Eric. Yeah, I love talking about Pan, so this might be a little long. But so my religion is centered around the Greek polytheistic religion, and in that religion, there's a force that's ever present, and it's called the ether. So it's not only is it a titan, but it's also a force. So it's considered a fiery element. It's the element that creates. So it's that part of the cosmos that births matter and planets and solar systems, and it's also the air that the gods breathe. So whenever, in my ideology, whenever you do witchcraft, whenever you do magic, you're pulling forth the ether. So you're pulling forth the witch flame. So this is something that we see in iconography with, for example, goddesses like Hecate. Her torches are the fiery ether. It's the witch flame. I tend to depict, when I depict Pan, I either give him the little disc right here, or I'll put a little flame over his head, kind of like this one. And that also represents the witch flame. So when I see the devil and the flames of hell, to me that's just fiery ether. That is literally the witch flame that empowers all of our rituals. So instead of kind of seeing him as a force that, we try to shy away from, that we try to justify to the masses that we don't worship the devil, in my personal view, I want to take that back. I want to claim it again, and I want to say, yes, we do worship the devil, because the devil is that force that is going to break the shackles that a lot of people have on themselves. And it's that force that's going to break the shackles that constrain society. So not only is it powerful in the fact that it stirs imagery for us witches, but it also stirs imagery to those who want to see us oppressed. So like Christians. In this group, we're no stranger to seeing how Christians have treated us just for having a chili taste-off. They try to come out in force. That's something that is not right. So if we're going to scare them with the imagery of their devil, who is basically our gods, I am all for that. I am all for really owning that power and showing them that you should fear us, because we are real. We deserve rights just like everybody else, and we're going to fight for them. So he's going to be our mascot. Not only does that honor all of those who have been persecuted in the past, all those pagans of when early Christianity was gaining power, but it also honors our gods in a very modern and new way to make them an active force again. So not only is it going to be an active force in our own homes, but it's going to permeate throughout the major religions that we know about. So whenever anyone asks you if you worship the devil, tell them, you can say yes or no, but you can say, in a way, they're my gods. They're the demonized gods that Christianity has tried to destroy, and they're not going to be destroyed. So, what people tend to do when they kind of explore this concept is they'll either work through it with just a statue of Pan or an image of Pan, or the statue of Baphomet. He is, some of them will have breasts, because again, it's a combined force of masculine, feminine, just everything in the universe. So he's a great force to have that not only represents Pan, but also that devilish force that we want to kind of tap into. Any questions so far about anything that we're kind of going over? Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things that we love saying when people say, do you worship the devil? We just say, not exclusively. There's other things we worship too. So one of the biggest and most frightening things about the Pan cult, for especially modern puritanical America, is the phallic imagery that comes along with him. So there's this, when I sculpted my statue and I was approaching companies to produce him, I actually talked to the one who picked me up, was Sacred Source. At first, when I was presenting the statue to them, they kind of had a little bit of a problem, because they didn't think that their pagan audience was going to respond well to the obvious, very explicit nudity. So that got me thinking, you know, that's always been something in my art that I always kind of displayed, simply because, again, in Greek polytheism, the phallus is, it doesn't represent necessarily a physical phallus, but the potent force of that god form. So that's why on Herms you see them, a lot of the statues have them. This is literally the divine energy. So it's just showing that it's a virile cult statue. So they wanted me to do a version that wasn't so explicit, and I had to tell them I can't do that. You know, whenever I buy, so I generally like to sculpt my own statues, but if I buy one and it's basically neutered, that's what the best way I can put it. I sculpt a phallus on my statues, because to me, if it doesn't have it, it's without its power. Because again, that goes back to the Christian church. Whenever they came across the Greek statues, there was this whole mission to put those little fig leaves on them. So basically that was displaying a sort of shame on our God. So it's basically telling them, oh, you're too naked, this is not good, so we'll put a little fig leaf. And for some reason, modern occult artists have perpetuated this. So they sculpt their statues and they put little fig leaves on them. And I cannot stand that. So I started sculpting mine, and I was like, you know what? We need to take some, you know, some of that imagery back, and why not do it in the most gratuitous and explicit way? So that's what I do, and that's kind of why they're like that. So another thing with the phallic imagery is it's apotropaic, which means it's evil averting. So like in Rome, you see the little charms that people would hang by their door that were little phalluses. Sometimes they had bells, sometimes it was a phallus with phallus feet, or like just weird crazy stuff, or like winged phalluses. Basically the winged phallus that can be traced to Dionysus, if we want to bring it back to there, because he's the mover of the phallus. So he's literally the power that moves it into an erection. So and that was a powerful, life-giving, creative thing. And because it's associated with life force, and because it's associated with you know, good things in life, like pleasure, babies, all that good stuff, evil forces don't like it, so they stay away from it whenever they see it. So for this month's Sunday school assignment, I was going to show you how to make a little phallic charm you can put by your door. So basically what you need, and this is going to be dedicated to Pan, so we're going to draw in his energy. Not only is this going to be evil averting, so it's going to be protective, but it's also going to be meant to promote increase. So not only increase in fertility, it could also be increase in health, prosperity, pretty much anything that you want to bring force into your life. So the one that I'm specifically doing is to bring prosperity. So it's going to be protective, but it's also going to bring increase in prosperity, because, you know, who doesn't love money? So, any questions so far before I start doing this? Hoping all my comments are caught up and everything. Alright, so first thing you'll need is some kind of little bag. So I chose a green one. You can do a red one. If you want to do like an increase for like magical abilities or psychic abilities, you could use a black one. If you don't have a little bag, you just do like a piece of cloth, probably like around that big. You're also going to need, yeah, I will definitely type up how to do this charm. So as soon as I'm done with the video, I'll get working on that. So the main part of the charm is going to be chestnuts. So these are sacred to Pan. Not only do they nourish, but they themselves bring luck, fertility, because of what they look like. So it's very obvious. So this is going to be the heart of the charm. So we're going to set those aside for now. Obviously some string. Hopefully this is long enough. If not, I'm going to have to get more. So the herbs that I chose for mine, It's going to be oak moss. So oak moss is a really good herb for Pan. Basically, it is a obviously it grows on trees. It's associated with the forest. It has a really good earthy scent. So basically, if you've ever smelled labdanum or rock rose, oak moss smells really close to it. And labdanum is harvested when goats eat the rock rose. The resin gets stuck in their beard and they brush it out. And then they sell the resin. So it's really, really powerfully connected to Pan. So I chose this. This is going to give it that natural element. It's going to give it that force of nature and the forests and all that good stuff. So we're going to do that. Now we have cinnamon. So cinnamon's associated with money. It's also because it's a hot plant, it's associated with protection as well. So this is going to help bring the prosperity that I want, but it's also going to be included in the protection itself. Also because it's sweet smelling. If you have any kind of unruly spirits in your house, sweet smelling stuff calms crazy spiritual activity. So basically it sweetens them to you, so it kind of gets them on your side a little bit. The next one is bee pollen. So bees are hard workers. They are close-knit for a community, so this is going to bring friendship, work. It's also going to bring, honey is basically kind of like a golden nectar, so it's going to bring, this is going to help with that money aspect as well, but it also will help bring health. This is actually really good for getting rid of allergies, overall immune health, so I'm going to put that in there as well. And then we got cloves. So this is another protective element right here. So this is really fiery. So this is going to help ward off anything that's going to try to get through the door. So I love putting cloves and stuff. It's not as sweet smelling as the cinnamon, but it's really good. And then of course last is pine bark. So pine is another money herb, but it's also sacred to Pan. So this is going to really bridge that connection with him. So we're going to throw some of that in there. Usually I like to grind it, but that'll be really noisy, so I'm not gonna. And then we're going to kind of stick it all together with some honey. So I have my honey right here. And then the last thing we have, so if anyone's ever used valerian root, it goes two ways. Sometimes you get it and it smells horrible, like gym socks, and then sometimes you get it and it smells really nice and earthy and perfumey. There's some kind that they sell at Mexican grocery stores. It comes, instead of cut, it comes in like the actual root. This is the kind that I'm going to use for basically the phallus of the charm. This, when it comes in this form, because it's not, the outside hull is not really compromised, it smells a lot better. It actually smells really good. So I'm going to use this, basically hanging valerian by your doors. Casts off the evil eye, and it protects from evil being able to come in. So we're going to use that too. Alright, so got my bowl here. I'm going to start mixing everything in. And while I'm doing that, if you have any questions, just let me know. So I usually do like, for each one it's going to be like just about this much. So it's just going to be enough to kind of give it some body, put the plant attribute in there, and give it some scent too. And I'm going to add some essential oils to this too, so I'll let you know when I do that too. So does anyone have any questions at this point? Sometimes the bee pollen gets stuck because of the honey that's in there. Smells good too. So how many of you put like charms and wards by your doors? Have you ever done that before? I know I kind of focus on warding a lot in my videos, but I just think it's so important. And the cloves, I'm just going to add maybe like 5. You don't really have to put a whole bunch of clove, because a little bit goes a long way with that. And if you put too much, it kind of overwhelms it. You'll really smell that clove in there. And you can use like powdered cinnamon, all that. Yeah, you should see our front doors. We have so many. I think I showed you on the last video, but we have so many charms and everything hanging. This is going to be another one, so. So again, my herbs are based on what I want. So the prosperity, the health, also the warding. So if you wanted to do it for other purposes, you can just find which herbs are most suitable for that. I would still suggest doing something, having at least 1 or 2 ingredients that are specifically associated with Pan, like pine or the oak moss. But other than that, also mushrooms are a big one for him. So if you wanted to add mushrooms there, basically he is, anything that grows on the forest floor is sacred to him. So we're going to add some pine in there. A good one if you wanted like to do one that brings love and lust. There's a myth where, well, there was actually a ritual where they would lay a image of Pan on stinging nettles. It was supposed to make him itch as someone would itch for love. So if you wanted to do that, you could put that in there. Bee pollen and valerian root, you can get these literally at anywhere. I don't know if there's like Trader Joe's or Whole Foods. Nature Time, you can get all of this at Nature Time. And it's actually it's really cheap. I think Julie over at Julie's Cauldron, she has valerian root if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so if you're allergic to anything, you can definitely replace it. There's an herb called fenugreek that I use sometimes in place of bee pollen. You can definitely do that. And for honey, you could just either omit it or do like a splash of wine, like red wine would be good for that. But yeah, definitely stay away from anything that you're allergic to. Yeah, I've made this similar charms to this where I've used wine. Another thing you can do is like if you give libations to Pan of wine on the altar. The good thing about wine is if you're doing like, I usually offer it in like a bowl, kind of like the one I'm mixing stuff in right here. And it will evaporate really quickly and it will leave a syrup that I use in witchcraft. So collect the syrup. It's a really good replacement for anything that needs honey. Yeah, Mountain Rose Herbs is fantastic. I love that place. Pine's kind of annoying. I'm trying to break it up so it fits in the charm. And again, I usually pop all this in a coffee grinder to get it really powdery, but I don't think I really need to do that for this. Alright. So I have my herbs, so it's about that much right there. Let me just grab some oils real fast that I totally forgot. Alright, so in the interest of saving time, I'm going to use our pan mix. I don't know if any of you know, but we have a store that we sell a bunch of stuff, and we have this really awesome oil to pan, so I'm just going to use that. I'll put what I would put in there. I'll put that when I type up everything that we're doing. You're welcome, Leona. Alright, so I'm going to add about 30 drops of oil. I want it really saturated. You're welcome, Maddie. Alright, so mix that up a little bit. Alright, so now we have a nice oily mixture of herbs. This does work better if you do powder it, though. I'm going to tell you that. So, because what we're going to do next. So again, I have honey. So yeah, you can actually find just a stick in the woods if you want to. Something close to your home. That would definitely work. Like if it's on your property, the better. So anything that you collect literally on your physical property is going to be really good for protecting your home. I do valerian just because of the metaphysical associations with it averting evil. But literally, if you pick up something and you tell it what you want it to do, more often than not, that's exactly what it's going to do. Really good substitutions would be like oak, pine again, beech tree if you have any of that, birch. Birch is a really good one. It's associated with the Christmas devil Krampus, which interestingly, Krampusnacht is on December 5th, which coincides with the Faunalia Rustica, which is an ancient Roman festival to the god Faunus, who is Pan's Roman equivalent. So some scholars believe that the cult is actually associated with it. So that's just pretty interesting that there's that Christmas devil who looks a lot like Pan, and that's birch. So if you can find some birch, that would be great too. Alright, so I'm putting a good amount of honey in here. So this charm is going to be really gross and sticky when you're done with it. So we'll mix that up. If you ever find these, so this is Goya brand honey. It's got the honeycomb in there. So I keep this on my altar to Pan as an offering. If I want to like kind of get a little bit of Pan energy throughout the day, I will take a scoop of this and put it in my coffee or tea. Then when you're done with the jar, you can make a spirit vessel for Pan out of it. So it'll have a little bit of the honey in there, it'll have the beeswax, so you can just add that as ingredients for your spirit vessel. And then they close, you can like decorate it, cover it with cloth, all kinds of cool stuff. Alright, so I'm going to take my rings off because I don't want them getting covered in honey. I like to do these a lot of times with my hands. You don't have to. I know some people just are weird about textures and consistencies and stuff, but for me it's just easier. So you're going to take the bag, and then you're going to take the chestnuts, you're going to just kind of cover them with all the stuff. So this is kind of like anointing them. It's getting them nice and infused with all of that. And you don't have to like get it perfect. So it could just be like a nice little coating. I've never used this bag this small, so it's going to be fun trying to get these honey covered nuts in here. Alright, so we're going to throw that in the bag. There we go. Yeah, it's my pleasure, Dom. I'm here to help, and I love doing these videos. So, Allie, going back to Greco-Roman tradition, spirit vessels. So, well, actually, this is actually found in a lot of traditions, especially like those from Africa, but also in the ancient religions around the Mediterranean. But basically, the there's this principle called theurgy. Well, it's a form of magic called theurgy. Basically, it is manifesting the divine in physical objects. So you know how people say like, oh, the gods are all around you, they don't need a vessel. This makes it so that you have kind of like a direct physical representation and a direct link to them. In the principles of theurgy, everything is cosmically linked via a kind of like an invisible chain, if you will. So one of the examples I like to use is, let's say you're making a spirit vessel to a sun god. Some of the things that would be associated with him are, if we look at animals, the lion. So lion teeth, lion claws. If we look at plants, it'll be like chamomile, calendula, or marigold. Things like that. If we look at stones, it would be amber, some sunstone. Metals would be gold. And all of these, if you mix them together, it creates kind of like a battery that houses the god's energy. It also helps them manifest in the physical world. If we go back to the story of Semele, basically that's the mother of Dionysus. She coupled with Zeus, got pregnant. She wanted to see Zeus's true form. He warned her that that wasn't a good idea, but she insisted. So when he appeared as his god form, which is not his human form, it was basically just pure lightning, she was immolated. So she was completely incinerated. That's because divine energy we cannot be in the presence of. It's basically pure celestial energy. So these batteries, what you do is you create it in a descending order. So you channel that energy through the part of an animal, the part of a plant, the part of a mineral, and then any other type of ingredients like earth, again, metals, gemstones. So when you put all of that together, it kind of like tapers it off. So once it gets to you and into the vessel, you can be in front, you can be in its presence. So like another thing that people say is like, our statues were not idol worshippers. In the practice of theurgy, you are an idol worshipper. When you make that spirit vessel and you put it next to your cult statue, that image literally becomes the god. So you are worshiping the physical god when you have a spirit vessel. If, let's say, you have your statue and it breaks, that does not mean you broke the god. That does not mean that you're cursed or anything, because that divine energy is just going to step out of it. It's not going to be some detrimental thing that harms you. I'm just going to take 1 second. I'm going to wash this honey off my hand, but I'll be right back. Alright, so I have everything in here. So I have the two chestnuts. I'm going to arrange them so they're kind of better fitting. I usually do like that little pointy side of the chestnut up. It just fits a little bit better in there. If you have extra herbs and stuff, you can throw those in there. So I'm going to do that too. So yeah, that's basically what a spirit vessel is. So it's like kind of like a divine battery that you keep next to your cult statue. As a sculptor, I usually create this inside the statue itself. So I'll make a little amulet or a little spirit vessel that I'll put in the heart or the chest of the statue, so that the statue is the actual spirit vessel. If you have one that you buy, just put it right alongside it. Alright, so this looks pretty good. Alright, so here is the bag, and as you can see, it looks very much like it's supposed to. I'm going to put the valerian in there. just going to tie this up. So there's no right way or wrong way to tie a charm, so just kind of do it so it stays closed really nicely. Okay, and line that up around there. And there you go. So we have a nice little phallic charm. The good thing about these is, you know, they smell really good and they just look cool when you hang them by your door. So I usually leave a little bit of string like this, and then you're just going to make a little loop so that you can hang it on a nail or something. And again, it is going to be a sticky mess and it's going to get dusty and gross, but that kind of adds to the charm. Okay, so yeah, these do not get moldy or rancid. Basically, nothing in here, because we're using all dried stuff, it's not going to spoil. So the honey is a preservative, so that's going to help keep it nice and good. If you're not using honey and you're using that wine syrup like I was talking about, again, that's not going to go bad either. So you can have this, you know, forever. I have some that I made 10 years ago that are still perfectly good. Sometimes I'll re-anoint them with oil just to kind of get a little bit more scent into them. But yeah, because everything's dried, nothing's going to happen. So there you go. So this is the charm itself. Pop that by your door. You can fumigate it with incense. So Pan likes benzoin, frankincense, any kind of earthy incense. Like there's this one that's a lot of people sell called Celtic Blend. That's really delicious, and it's pretty much got everything you could ever dream of for Pan in there. So you can burn that for him. As long as it's done with reverence and sincerity, he's going to accept anything anyway. So fumigate that with incense. So basically to do that, let me get this incense lit. It was supposed to be lit, but it stopped. So here's the incense. So the incense I have right here is a saffron incense. So basically all you do is you just pass it through. And you can like say a prayer or a hymn. And then just set that to the side, and that is ready to go. And that's an easy way to make a charm for your door. So, any questions at this point? We'll start talking about Pan again in a second. But I just wanted to get the charm part out of the way. So this is going to be the assignment for the month. So again, get creative with it. You do not have to do it the way I did it. If you want to kind of take some liberties, you go right ahead. I'm going to type it up as soon as I'm done with this video. I'll type up the instructions. One thing that I also wanted to bring up was that today is actually a kind of folk festival that you can associate with that diabolical force that we were talking about. It's the Day of Candelaria. So while this is a saint day, I assure you she is not a saint. And she's this right here. So let me kind of bring this. So this is actually, well, the way we honor Candelaria is through Peruvian folklore. Basically, Candelaria is Pachamama, or Mother Earth. Mother Earth has a son called Supai, or Tio Supai, who's this little devil right here. He is the spirit of the mountains, much like our Lord Pan is. when the Christians saw that, the Peruvians were worshiping a god of the mountains, they demonized him and said, that's the devil of the mountains. You're basically underground. That's the devil's domain. So what did the local people do? They said, fine, if he's going to be a devil, he's going to look like a devil. And we'll start praying to him in the form of a devil. He's got a lot of the similar characteristics as all mountain and nature gods typically do. He's got the horns, the hooves, and the phallic imagery. Yeah. Oh, where is she? Yeah. Oh, yeah, and we have a bigger altar to Candelaria right there. Right there. So, he's the same in the fact that he roams the mountains. He brings riches to the mountains, so he basically ejaculates veins of silver into the mountain, so when the miners go in there, they will basically take his blessings. He likes coca leaves, which is hard to come by here, but you can get a form of coca tea, and then like a grain alcohol like Everclear, something like that. But it's that very similar energy that we're talking about as far as Pan and the devil go, and that really literal transformation, the metamorphosis from wild god to Christian devil. So this is a really good example of how living traditions have done it. They literally embrace what the Christians try to impose on them when they say, you're worshiping the devil. They said, fine, well, if you keep telling us that, we will worship the devil. And then they literally put the image of the devil on him. If you want to research El Tío, really big in Bolivia and Peru, some amazing images come up. And this is a mountain god. He is going to look exactly like the devil, but that's just the guys that he is now worshipped in. Let's see. Yeah, honey will compost if you leave it out. If you specifically if you mix it with something for the purpose of compost. But in this case, what's going to happen is it's going to kind of harden around everything. So right now it's going to be really gooey and horrible, but honey crystallizes, especially when it's in such small amounts, because it's not close to anything that's moist. Oh, and again, this is going on the inside of your door, so it's not going outside. So you're going to put this on the inside part of your door. It's going to actually kind of dry a little bit, and all that stuff that you put on the chestnuts and you put in the bag is going to turn a little bit harder. So you should be good. I have these all over the place, and I have not had a problem yet. So. All right. So, is there any questions at this point? So, if you wanted to start working with Pan and you haven't before, it's really easy. So basically, just go out into nature, wander around, and feel that natural force. So really connect with the forests, the fields, the groves. If you can, open up your mind's eye, or what I do is I say, ignite your witch flame, which is basically focusing all your power into your third eye area, and then you'll kind of feel like a little bit of tingle, and that's it basically opening up. So when you're walking around, when you're seeing nature, feel that God force behind it, and when you connect with it, invite that presence into your life. You can use, basically, if you don't have an image like a statue, again, you can do the spirit vessel. You can find a rock from the forest that you can use as a cult object. The great thing about that is you can paint it, you can decorate it, all that cool stuff. I've seen people use goat skulls. A really crude image that we actually did at my sister Julie's, where Julie's cauldron is we put a shrine to Pan with kind of like a stang stick. So it's like, what is that? Staghorn sumac, and it's basically a stang. So it's like a staff that's forked at the top. It looks like two horns. So that's a really good image for him. And in fact, in modern witchcraft traditions like Wicca, they do use that as an image of the horn god. So you can definitely use that as well. And then just whatever influence you need in your life from him, whether it's the fertility aspect, whether it's to get rid of your enemies. He's really good at that. He's helped. The reason why his cult moved to mainland Greece was because he helped the Athenians defeat the Persians at the Battle of Marathon. Basically, there was a runner who ran into Pan, who actually saw an apparition of Pan, who told him, if the Athenians promise to worship me, I will help them win the battle. And at the battle, he appeared as a blinding light to the Persians, basically causing them to be disoriented. They started killing each other and going mad, so they really attributed that to Pan. That's one of his main powers. So he's really, really good at keeping your enemies away. And I know people say that, oh, people don't have that many enemies, but you know, we all have enemies, and it's good to not have them in your life. So he will definitely help with that. He's good with if you have domesticated animals, so pets or livestock. He's really good with that. He is, for me, he is the king of witches. So Hecate is the queen of witches. He would be the king of witches. He brings the potency and the powers to plants. So all the herbs that I use, basically, I qualify them as his patronage. So he has that capacity for me. So he will approach you how you best need him. So let him talk to you. He comes to you in dreams. He's come to me several times in dreams. So just, yeah, let him guide you and show you who he is if he's meant to be in your cult. So, any other questions as far as what we've gone over? Anything else you want me to talk about? I'm going to put Candelaria back over there. Hopefully not knock her down. Alright, so if there's no other questions, that's going to conclude tonight. But I'm always around, so if you have any questions, let me know. You can shoot me a message or just do a post in the group, and I'll be more than happy to answer anything for you. Alright, well, thank you all for tuning in. And I will definitely be doing more of these. So also keep out for updates for the Witches Ball. So we're going to, as that develops, we'll be doing more updates. So thank you so much, Michelle. You are very welcome. And I look forward to doing it again because I love doing these. So also, if there's anything that you want me to talk about next time, you can put that in the group as well, and I'll see what I can do. All right. Thank you, Dom. Yep, that's my husband Alan's project. It is absolutely amazing, and we cannot wait till the tarot cards get in. That's been nerve-wracking and exciting all at the same time. So hopefully they're here soon. Thank you, Maddie, and it was my pleasure. All right, everyone, have a good night, and I will talk to you next time.
What's the button?